In a small town on the outskirts of Lagos, a man named Chijoke was known for something that brought him more sorrow than pride. Unlike most men, whose worries often revolved around having too little, Chijoke suffered because he had too much. His burden was hidden beneath his clothes, a secret that only those closest to him knew, a manhood so massive that no woman could take him in. From a young age, Chijoke knew he was different. As a boy, he noticed how other children changed in size and shape, but his own growth never seemed to stop. At first, he thought it was a blessing. In secondary school, his classmates whispered about it in the locker room, their tones filled with envy and admiration. But as he grew into a man, that admiration turned to disbelief, and eventually, to mockery. Women admired him from afar. His tall, well-built frame, rich dark skin, and confident stride made him a favorite among the ladies. Mothers even pointed him out to their daughters, calling him a real man, the kind who could lead a family. But Chijoke knew the truth, he was no use to any woman. His first attempt at love had been with Adaora, his childhood sweetheart. She had always adored him, their bond deep and genuine. But on their wedding night, the truth revealed itself in the cruelest way. What should have been a night of passion became a moment of horror. Adaora gasped, then pulled away, her eyes filled with fear. She tried, but it was impossible. Tears of frustration streamed down Chijoke's face as he realized his fate. The marriage was short-lived. Adaora, too ashamed to speak of it, simply left, claiming she could not bear the weight of a love that could never be fulfilled. Rumors spread. Women giggled behind their hands when he passed by. Men, once envious, now laughed openly. Some called him cursed. Others said he was being punished by the gods for the sins of his ancestors. Chijoke withdrew from society, burying himself in work. But loneliness gnawed at him. He longed for companionship, for love, for a woman who could accept him, despite the impossibility of their union. He traveled far and wide, seeking answers from herbalists, doctors, and even spiritualists. Some gave him potions. Others chanted prayers over him. But nothing changed. One day, an old woman approached him in the market. She had heard of his troubles and claimed she knew of a woman who could help. Desperate, Chijoke followed her to a distant village where he met Nena, a woman unlike any he had ever seen. Nena was strong, both in spirit and in body. She did not flinch when he told her his story. Instead, she smiled and told him that every burden had its blessing, and perhaps he had not yet found the right way to embrace his own. That night, Chijoke discovered a truth about himself that he had never considered. That night, under the soft glow of an oil lamp, Nena looked into Chijoke's eyes with an expression that was neither fear nor pity, but something deeper, understanding. She traced her fingers along his arm, as if feeling the weight he carried, not just between his legs but in his soul. "You have spent your life believing you are cursed," she said, her voice calm, steady. "But have you ever thought that maybe you have been seeking the wrong kind of love?" Chijoke swallowed hard. He had heard every insult, endured every whisper behind his back, but never had anyone spoken to him like this. "What other kind is there?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nena smiled. "The kind that isn't just about the body." He wanted to laugh, to scoff at the idea. What was a man if not his ability to take a woman, to claim her, to satisfy her? That was what he had been taught. That was what made a man whole. But as he sat there with Nena, something in her gaze made him pause. "Come," she said, standing. "Let me show you something." She led him outside, through the quiet village, past the sleeping huts and the watchful trees. They walked until they reached a river, its surface shimmering under the moonlight. "Water," she said, kneeling beside it. "It takes the shape of whatever holds it. It does not force itself, it does not break what it touches. It moves with what is given." Chijoke frowned, not understanding. Nena took his hand, placing it on her chest, just above her heart. "You have spent your life trying to fit into a mold that was never made for you. But love is not just one thing, Chijoke. It is not just what a man does to a woman in the dark. It is in how he touches her mind, how he fills her soul. You have been trying to conquer, when you should have been learning to flow." His heart pounded. No woman had ever spoken to him this way. "You mean I should just give up?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. You should change the way you see yourself. For the first time, Chijoke felt something shift inside him. He had spent years chasing an idea of manhood that had only brought him pain. But what if love, true love, wasn't about fitting into expectations? That night, he and Nena lay together, not in the way he had always longed for, but in a way he never knew he needed. She held him as he wept, as he released years of frustration, of shame. She kissed his scars, the ones no one could see. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the village, Chijoke felt lighter than he had in years. Perhaps his journey was not about finding a woman who could take him. Perhaps it was about finding a woman who could see him. Chijoke remained in the village for days, then weeks, his spirit unraveling in ways he never imagined. He and Nena spent hours talking beneath the old baobab tree, sharing stories of pain and laughter, of dreams abandoned and reborn. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, he finally asked, "If love is more than just the body, then what does it mean for us?" Nena stopped, turning to face him. "It means we write our own story," she said. "One that isn't bound by what others expect." Her words settled in his chest like a steady drumbeat. For the first time in years, Chijoke stopped searching for a cure, stopped trying to mold himself into something else. Instead, he embraced what he was and what he could offer. With Nena's encouragement, he began to teach. The village children would gather around him in the evenings, eager to learn from the men who had once seen himself as broken. He told them stories, taught them to carve wood, and shared the wisdom he had collected from his travels. One night, as he sat by the fire, an elder approached him. "You came here looking for healing," the old man said, settling onto the ground beside him. "But perhaps you were sent here to heal us." Chijoke had no words, only a deep understanding that settled in his bones. Months passed, then a year. Nena and Chijoke built a life together, not one bound by tradition, but one woven with love, patience, and understanding. When people in the village gossiped about their unusual union, Nena only laughed. "Let them talk," she would say, squeezing his hand. "Their world is too small for a love like ours." And so, Chijoke, the man who had once been a prisoner of his own body, became something more. Not just a man, but a teacher, a lover, a storyteller. He had not found the answer he sought, but he had found peace. And that, he realized, was enough. One evening, as the harmattan breeze whispered through the village, Chijoke sat outside his hut, watching Nena grind millet. The scent of roasting yams filled the air, mingling with the distant laughter of children. Life in the village had settled into a rhythm, one that felt natural, even beautiful. But deep inside, he knew something still lingered, an unanswered question, a silent longing. Nena, as if sensing his thoughts, wiped her hands on her wrapper and sat beside him. "Your mind is far away," she observed. He sighed. "I am happy here. But I still wonder, is this truly enough?" She tilted her head. "What more do you seek?" He hesitated. It was difficult to put into words. Though he had found love in Nena's wisdom and companionship, though he had found purpose in teaching, a part of him still ached for something deeper, a connection that went beyond the mind, beyond the soul, something that reached the most primal part of his being. Nena studied him for a moment, then stood, dusting off her wrapper. "Come with me." She led him through the village, past the market stalls, past the elders who sat under the mango tree. They walked until they reached the outskirts, where the land stretched wild and untamed. There, in a small compound, lived an old woman named Mama Ejima, a midwife and healer known for her knowledge of the body's mysteries. Nena greeted her respectfully and gestured for Chijoke to sit. The old woman squinted at him, her wrinkled face unreadable. "So, you are the man burdened by too much," she said, her voice raspy but firm. Chijoke stiffened. "I." Mama Ejima waved a hand. "I have heard the stories. You think the gods have cursed you, but do you know what I think?" He swallowed. "What?" She leaned forward, her milky eyes piercing into his soul. "The gods do not give burdens without also giving keys." He frowned. "I have searched for answers all my life. There is no key." Mama Ejima chuckled, a sound like dried leaves rustling in the wind. "Perhaps you have been looking in the wrong places." She reached for a small clay pot and removed the lid. A rich, earthy scent filled the air. "This," she said, holding up a thick, dark paste, is made from the roots of the Igba tree, mixed with the sap of the ogilisai leaf. It is an ancient remedy, known only to a few. Chijiyoke's brows furrowed. What does it do? The old woman smiled. It softens what is rigid. Makes what is feared more welcoming. His heart pounded. Could it be possible? After all these years, could there be a way? Nena placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Sometimes, she whispered, the answers we seek have been waiting for us all along. That night, for the first time in his life, Chijiyoke dared to hope. That night, under the silver glow of the moon, Chijiyoke sat by the fire, staring at the clay pot Mama Ejima had given him. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, releasing the thick, earthy scent into the air. Nena sat beside him, her presence steady, unwavering. You don't have to do this tonight, she said softly. Chijiyoke exhaled. I have spent my life running from what I am. If there's even a chance, I have to try. He dipped his fingers into the cool paste and applied it as instructed, feeling a strange warmth seep into his skin. It was neither painful nor immediate, but as the night stretched on, a sensation of ease, of balance, settled over him. He could hardly believe it. Nena watched him closely, then took his hands in hers. We walk this path together, she whispered. For the first time in his life, Chijiyoke did not feel fear. There was no shame, no weight of expectations crushing him. Only the quiet hum of possibility. That night, he and Nena lay together, not just in love, but in a union that had once seemed impossible. And when their bodies finally became one, Chijiyoke did not feel broken. He felt whole. Days turned into weeks, and the village began to notice a change in him. He walked taller, his laughter came easier. The men no longer whispered, the women no longer giggled behind their hands. He was not a man burdened by too much, he was simply a man, finally at peace with himself. Mama Ejima's remedy had given him a gift, but more than that, it was Nena's love that had truly healed him. Love that saw him beyond his body, love that embraced him in his entirety. In time, he and Nena were blessed with children, children who grew up knowing that love was more than flesh, more than expectations. They knew their father's story, not as a tragedy, but as a testament to resilience, self-acceptance, and the power of finding someone who truly sees you. And so, Chijiyoke's journey ended not with despair, but with love, with legacy, with a life well lived. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.